Each and every podcast at the Optimize You studio is sponsored by Optimize You Evansville. At Optimize You Evansville, we help you take control of your health, performance, and vitality through cutting-edge hormone optimization, peptide therapy, athletic recovery, weight loss, and sexual health solutions. Whether you're an athlete looking to maximize recovery, someone striving for sustainable weight loss, or just looking to feel like your best self again, we used advanced diagnostics and personalized treatment plans to get you there. Our science-backed approach helped optimize energy levels, mental clarity, muscle recovery, and overall well-being. Because feeling great isn't optional, it's essential. You ready to elevate your potential? Let's get started today at Optimize You Evansville, where normal is not optimal.
Welcome. We've got Dana Roy and Sarah Effinger. Welcome to the Optimize You podcast. These are two of my students.
Yeah, I hear about them all the time.
And glad that you guys are taking some time to come to the podcast and maybe share your story. If you don't know, Derek with Optimize You has started this podcast network, and it's called Better Human. Mm-hmm. And we like to bring in people who we think are
unique
better
stories.
Yeah.
And using life challenges to improve and better themselves and get their stories out there. So
yeah,
we figured you guys fit the bill.
And to my knowledge, I don't know if we have a Master World Champion or a Pan Am Champion.
Let me think.
In the Tri-State.
No, in the Tri-State. I thought you meant on the show before.
No. But like in the Tri-State, so, maybe they could get some.
And they're right here in one spot.
In one spot.
I feel incredibly protected right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing to worry about.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we'll just, the podcast is really laid back and just kind of want to hear your guys' stories and just have a conversation and to get to know everybody. I mean, because there's some things like when he interviewed me, we've known each other for years, and he learned some things about me, and I learned some things about him. And
you probably don't share stories in class a lot. I mean, I'm sure you know each other well enough, and you get this camaraderie together, but you don't really know what's brought you there, So, and I'm sure there's some, everybody's got their own unique reason of why they decide to go and strangle each other for a couple hours a week. So,
exactly.
And especially take it to the point where you're like, oh, I would like to take my skills around and compete against other people that are trying to strangle me. So not just my friends.
And Derek is very familiar with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. He's a blue belt himself. Both Alyssa and Sonny have trained and competed, and so I think it'll be a good conversation.
Yeah. I love to reminisce about it. So take me back,
especially with females, right?
Oh yeah,
with Alyssa.
I did jiu-jitsu. I always tell people I did jiu-jitsu before jiu-jitsu was cool. That was someone wouldn't claim to fame, but
before Joe Rogan
told everybody they had to do it, and had a pretty injury, which is a whole long story, but reluctantly, I'm going to say reluctantly, but got both my kids involved just because I knew the value that it brought to me, and wishing that something like that was available when I was a kid to especially deal with the world today, and they've grown out of it. They've done other things, they've kind of gone back hit and miss, but they're both out of it now. Hopefully they will get back into it at some point, but the foundational confidence and resilience and grit and calmness in situations that otherwise really throw today's teenagers into a tailspin doesn't really occur at our house. And I can 99% attribute that to jiu-jitsu, because as we talked about in the last one, it was, when you go and you get kind of strangled and, getting squashed and everything, what else could be bad? If you're learning how to defend yourself and how to get out of situations, there's not a whole lot of scary stuff out there. So it really strikes a piece with me because my daughter, grew up doing jiu-jitsu and competed and did a lot of stuff and made a lot of boys cry and that fun stuff. It's always proud dad moments. So women of jiu-jitsu always fascinate me. So that's why you two are here.
Yeah. So we'll just start out and tell us a little bit about yourselves. And Dana, you can start first.
Yeah, so I started, 6-7 years ago, somewhere around there. My youngest was on the mats, and I was the mom sitting on the sideline. Kind of watched for a while and got my head thinking, about self-defense and the value of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, kind of what I was seeing on the mats. And so I approached Scott and, asked him if he ever thought about doing a women's self-defense class, because at that time there weren't many women on the mat. It was a whole bunch of guys. It was very intimidating. I'd never done anything like jiu-jitsu before. So he got together, a 10-week, I think, women's self-defense course. And I think it was maybe 2 weeks in that I was like, yeah, sign me up. Let me try a class. And I haven't left since. Kind of a weird addiction in a way, right? The least stressful part of my day is getting choked out by her or, by kids half my age. Mm-hmm. I've rolled with Alyssa. Mm-hmm. I dare a guy to try to mess with her, mm-hmm. right? She just has that confidence and mm-hmm. can defend herself. And that's really why I started, right? Because it is a crazy world. And I wanted to be able to defend myself should something happen. And I was, maybe a year or so in and traveling for work and traveling by myself for work. And there was just a noticeable difference, right? That confidence that you were talking mm-hmm. about, right? It's just a noticeable difference. And I think how you carry yourself, after you've been training for a while, nobody's going to mess with you because you start walking like a badass and they don't want to mess with you, right?
People notice that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I always, walking into some place and not that I'm never a violent guy. I was never like a looking for trouble kind of dude, mm-hmm. But knowing that if anything happened and just being like, whatever happens here, I could feel like I could handle, mm-hmm. and just having that confidence. Now, everybody does jiu-jitsu, so we can't really think that anymore. But 15 years ago, you could be like, hey, I'm okay. This will be fine no matter what happens, because you just stand a little bit taller, a little bit prouder, kind of thing. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
But you are now a purple belt.
I am,
and has competed in Fuji tournaments, IBJJF tournaments,
Fight to Win,
mm-hmm. and very loves competitions. Hard to find people that want to fight her. She goes to tournaments and nobody's there. And actually won past year Master Worlds, won at weight and won absolute. And in the IBJJF world, you can't lose. If you lose, you're out.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to keep winning. And plan is go back this year.
Absolutely.
Right? Defend the title.
Signed up with this one. Signed up with this one.
So is there? Was it just sitting there and watching and just being kind of fascinated at the art of it? Because it is an art. It is, and people say that, and people that have never done it before will be like, oh God, here's this, it's the art of this. But until you're down there doing it, that's
totally
truly the
different.
only word to describe it, right? It's just, it is a game.
It's totally different doing it mm-hmm. versus watching it.
Oh, 100%.
Because I love to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But I think after I watched my first tournament, which I think was in Nashville,
yeah.
We went and watched, and we hadn't been in it but maybe even a month. And after I watched the girls, I was like, hey, I want to do this. Like, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't just watch. Like, we were there all day, and she didn't leave the rail. Yeah. When she said watch, she watched from 9 till 4 o'clock.
Yeah. She was really just stalking prey. Is what
Yeah,
she was doing.
she was just, like,
It was intriguing.
Like, everybody usually takes a break and comes back and, sits down and grabs a protein bar or something to drink or something. Like, where's Sarah? She's over watching.
She's still up there. Yeah.
She's still over watching. But Sarah, tell us a little bit about yourself then.
So I really got into it basically just because of John. He wanted to try it, and
John is your husband.
Yes, John is my husband. I knew that he really had went a couple times and enjoyed it, and I thought, well, if it's going to keep him active, then I'll give it a whirl. And so I went my first class by myself, enrolled with Scott. And I don't know why I went back. I don't know what. But then I was like, okay, well, I'll go back and I'll try it. But really, I think a lot of it, too, was just people made me feel welcome, even though I didn't have a clue what I was doing. But definitely the atmosphere, I think, for me was a lot of it. Because I was so used to powerlifting at home. And we have our own gym at home. So I was used to being by myself or with a few select people lifting. So to have a whole group of people around me that were, in essence, everyone supports everyone, for me, that was a lot of it. That was appealing to me.
Yeah, Sarah's been a little bit modest. I mean, she did some powerlifting at home.
No, we already had that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, don't you hold some world records or something at your weight?
Yeah, I held the 123 class.
Yeah, just at home.
I don't know where I stand now,
but at one time you were what?
Yeah, one time I had the best squat for 123 weight class, which was 540.
Jesus.
And
she's incredible. Incredible.
I was in the top 5 with the 132 weight class was 600. Yeah. So
it's amazing. I mean, I don't know. Well, I'm going to repeat ourselves just for the audience. Yes. Whenever we were opening up the clinic and we're kind of doing this tour of the site place or whatever, and and that Brian, the owner, is walking me around. They're like, "Oh, here's the gym or whatever." And so I walk through this gym and there's this
5'1".
No offense, 5 foot whatever girl with like these powerlifting shorts on with quads the size of my head, and just. I say it looked 6 foot compared to her, but I mean, it may have been a 4.5 foot box jump, and just like up, down. I was like, God, who are these people out here? And I'm telling everybody about it. And like, I don't know what they're doing out there, but let me tell you, there was this girl. And then 2 weeks later, as we're starting to open and kind of meet everybody, I meet you and John, and I was like, you're the girl that, and then now here we are, 2 years later, now she's Jiu-Jitsu champion, and,
Pan Am champion,
world record, squat holder.
Yeah, but just lifts at home,
just minor stuff.
Yeah. But also you did some bodybuilding prior.
Yeah.
You guys know that, for the audience may not.
Oh yeah,
with your bodybuilding, she did some bodybuilding.
Yeah, I did that for probably 5 years. Powerlifted for probably 5 years, and I still lift, but not on the powerlifting level. Just basically to what is going to benefit my jiu-jitsu at this point.
Yeah, so tell us about that. So somebody with a powerlifting, bodybuilding background, how the training for that from a strength standpoint is different for jiu-jitsu.
So for powerlifting, your focus is on one lift. So for jiu-jitsu, basically the cardio endurance side, one lift isn't going to get you very far.
Right.
So I definitely have kind of switched up my training where I do more reps, lower weight, trying to build my endurance, build the cardio side of it, but still maintain the muscle I have, not necessarily get stronger, which was my goal before. But the rep sequence that I use now definitely is more beneficial versus the one rep and the heavier weight.
Yeah, it's not a benefit in jiu-jitsu at all to be big, bulky.
No.
Well, there's something to that.
There's some strong issues, right? Yeah.
But I think if you can bench 300 pounds and then you know your ability to bench 400 pounds, that's probably not gonna help you. But if you get some size and some technique, strength does matter.
Yeah, and the technique is the key word there, right? Yeah. So,
but if I was big and strong and didn't have any technique and knowing how to use it, it's not going to benefit me, which is kind of where I'm at now. I need to improve my technique to have my strength do the most work for me versus just being strong, because then I tire even quicker. And that's not to my benefit either. So
she goes to Florida for the Pan tournament and wins her first match 9-0 and then subs the person and then goes to the final and is up 15-0 and subs the person. So
she didn't just win.
She dominated.
She dominated.
They did not score an advantage. They did not score a point on her.
Right. And then still subs them. Yeah.
Which is it's a totally different thing though, because most of my training in the gym is with guys and people that are way bigger than me.
Certainly, yeah.
So I don't really get to train against people my size and my skill level. So to do that, it's a whole different ball game, and you don't even really think about it. But because a lot of times when I leave the gym now after jiu-jitsu, I'm like, God, I'm not learning anything. Kind of down on myself. But then when I go against people my size, I realize, hey, it is paying off. I am learning and I am doing something correctly. Even though the day-to-day where I'm rolling with people 3 times my size, I feel like I'm just getting beat up and I'm not accomplishing much.
But that's going to happen this year at Master Worlds because as a white belt, they don't have an absolute. She's now a blue belt. She's been training for over 18 months and 4 or 5 days a week. So she's a blue belt. So now she can compete at weight and absolute, which will be bigger.
And I feel like that's an advantage for us, right? I mean, we're rolling mainly against guys. We have a lot more women in the gym now, which is amazing. I love seeing all the women on the mat.
We've got the best. I mean, that's my school, so I'm a little biased.
Go for it, bro.
But we've got the best women team. We have a good male team too, but I mean, I don't think there's a women team that can touch us in the 500-mile radius.
No, I agree.
Yeah. So whenever and I know Dana, you got what's your record? I mean, how many bouts have you had or matches have you had?
Tournaments?
Yeah.
I have lost count, double digits easy. I'm looking at you for an estimation, Scott. I
have no idea. I think
a lot.
A lot, and I think she's only lost 2 matches.
Yeah.
I think I know that.
She's not going to talk about
it. Source subject, Scott.
It's not a sore subject at
we
all.
can edit that out.
But out of a lot of matches,
a lot of them, right?
Yeah, she's lost like 2, and but.
So what is it? So whenever you go, you show up to these tournaments, and you're obviously going against women, coming from a school that predominantly male opponents, and at this point they're not taking it easy on you anymore, right? No. I mean, they're giving you what you need, right? God, this is probably going to get us in trouble. But what is it like when you go to the tournaments and you're going against actual female opponents? You
don't even think about it,
right? Yeah.
I don't think that when I roll in the gym now, especially with guys, you always have that thought God, they're heavy. I don't think I've ever went to a tournament and had a match where I've worked with a female and thought that. Just because we're so used to that in the gym that when we get to the tournament, I don't even think about the size of the person.
Here's a question I have goes along with that too, is being a female and coming to a predominantly male gym and rolling, because it's close contact. How for the audience, how did you feel about that when you first started training, and how do you feel about it now?
I wouldn't say nervous at first. I think it was just, it's something you have to get past and realize that it's a sport that you're doing. Everyone's professional. Now it doesn't bother me at all. I don't even think about it, But I think, and you kind of can tell when someone new comes in, I think you can attest to this. someone new comes in and the first few rolls until they've come a few times, they're kind of, a little not standoffish, but you have to overcome that and realize that it's just part of the sport. And until you do, and if you can't, then you're not going to make it.
Right.
What about you, Dana? You were like our first female.
Yeah.
So you didn't have any other females.
Yeah, all I had pretty much was males. I think Danielle trained every once in a while back then. But yeah, I walked into all males on the mat. It was in my head a little bit probably the first couple of weeks, just how close contact it is and stuff. I wouldn't say it was ever weird because Scott does a really good job of kind of keeping creeps out. And, everybody, like Sarah said, is very professional. I don't even think about it now. Really, the only time I think about it is when Scott puts me with the new guy just to prove a point, and I kind of find that a little fun in a sick, twisted way. And do you ever kind of enjoy that just a little too much? Just a little too much, yeah. But yeah, now I don't even think about it. I mean, we've rolled with all the guys so much, and they're honestly like brothers at this point, and we've been through blood, sweat, and tears, literally, with these people, and so you just kind of build that camaraderie. It's not a male-female thing to me anymore.
No. Well, and I think from the self-defense standpoint, it's something that you definitely have to have in your mind, because if it's a self-defense situation with us, most likely it's going to be a male, and they're not going to have any regard to that, period.
They're there with a purpose, right? A violent purpose,
Exactly.
Right.
So the fact that we can overcome that and it doesn't bother us, I think is a plus on the self-defense standpoint.
And I think it's an advantage that we get to train with guys, right? Like I'm in on a lot of Facebook groups, a lot of things like that, and a lot of women only want to roll with other women, and I think that's really a disservice to them because, to Sarah's point, if you're going to get attacked out in the real world, it's probably going to be a guy attacking a girl, right?
Yeah.
More times than not. Yeah. And so we have experience rolling with guys that are bigger than us, especially, Sarah. I'm a little bigger than Sarah, but we have that experience, and so it's not as scary, right?
Yeah, Scott and I, whenever we did that first, when we were doing that women's self-defense class, I think Alyssa was like an attack dummy, and I was like filming it, and we were talking about, like kind of developing something like that, because it's not a kick him in the nuts, gouge him in the eyes kind of thing. It's not gonna, it's not that.
And the first thing I tell people at the class is if you're going to a weekend seminar, or if you're going to a week long, even this 10-day or 10-week course that we have, by the end of it, you're not going to be a ninja. You're not going to be able to really defend yourself like you have the capability to. You're probably going to learn more about situational awareness and psychological type of stuff, but the actual physical stuff you usually don't get until you get about 18 months in of actual training 3-4 days a week. So,
there's so many moments still, even in training, where you probably attest to this too, where you freeze up. Even in class, right? You get into some position, you're like, God, I mean, what do I do here? Especially with this guy.
I knew he was going to look at me. He calls me Buffy because he says that sometimes I just sit there and I'm buffering because I'm like, I know what to do and I know I just learned it, but my brain is like on pause.
Yeah.
But
use the technique. We just taught this. We just taught this.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I want to be able to overcome. So if it is a real life situation. And let's be real, we can sit here and talk about like whatever titles we have or whatever we've accomplished, but the bottom line for it really for me is the safety standpoint. And if I can learn to get past that freeze up that I still have that all the time, I don't know that necessarily that I would have it in a real life situation, but it does give you the confidence. And that's kind of where I feel like it leads.
Absolutely. And it's through repetition, right?
Sure.
Like Scott said, you can't train, 6 months, a year and have that confidence. It takes time. It takes experience. It takes freezing up, overcoming it, learning what you need to do in that situation. But yeah, I've rolled a Scott before and got stuck, and all of a sudden I started screaming, "I have a question! I have a question!" You know.
So what does that do from here?
You remember when you asked, "I have a question"?
Well,
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something.
You both,
Right.
you both clearly don't freeze up because you're not giving up points in actual
No.
combat situations. So that is there, but the application in an environment where you can have the opportunity to
Yes.
sit and think about it, then I think that's probably the explanation of it. Because you get into a tournament, you're clearly
right.
doing
and
okay.
I think that's when you think about, for me, that's when I've been like, okay, I am learning by repetition, me going in every week, being consistent, going to classes. I may feel like I'm not learning, but clearly it's paying off because in those situations, I did one sub was an arm bar. I don't even do arm bars. I'm not good at them. I don't even know how I did it, but it came to me because of repetition.
You're right.
So it pays off.
Yeah, and just from what I can remember is it's just feeling that you feel that slight little movement where the opportunity's there, and if you execute right then and there without thinking about it,
Yes.
then that's when those things happen. And you're like, oh my God, what is that? Oh, it's over. Oh wow, that's that. That's that. So
Well, I try to tell people that you learn the most through failing, and if you've got to be okay with failing to do jiu-jitsu because it's very, very frustrating.
And a little bit of pain, right? You learn through pain to
Yeah.
a certain degree as well. Like I can defend an armbar pretty good today. Why? Because I got armbarred a lot in the
Yeah.
beginning, right? And so
Where you're like, I'm tired of getting armbarred. So much.
exactly, I gotta figure this out because this is all hard. Yeah.
But then you think you figured it out and you come back and you still get armbarred over again and you're like,
Yeah, from a different position
or a different person. And then
Because as you're figuring out things, so are your teammates, and so they're figuring out a new way to do it or a new way to hit it.
Yeah.
And so while you figured out their old way,
they
That's
have a new
that's-
tactic.
they're advancing.
But that's how everybody gets it better, right?
Yes.
They have to get better. Yeah. So
yeah, and I guess that kind of goes back to I guess that's where I was trying to get to with the training question from earlier, was that if I've got these huge biceps, and arm bar is a perfect example. If I have a huge bicep, my arm starts to hurt right here, right?
Yeah.
As you're yanking on it. Where if I'm nice, flexible, and I've got good, strong joints, where I do with the kind of training that you're doing now, where I'm
Right.
doing this more joint stability and strengthening kind of thing, other than aesthetically looking good.
Yeah.
Well, then I've got a little bit of I got some give that I can hold up, and then I can work my way out of it, as opposed to getting right here and be like, oh, that's it. That's as far as it's going to go. So the long, lanky strength works really well for it. The big, bulky, and I know there's Jeff Monsons of the world, these like the boulder guys that do great, but they've learned to use that strength and not get themselves in those situations, and they're avoiding situations that they're unfamiliar with, right, or uncomfortable in.
Yeah, absolutely. Like in a tournament, I am less worried about the girls that are bigger than me. I'm more worried about the smaller girls. In our gym, not that I'm not worried about the Johns of the world, right? But it's those small athletic guys that can roll up into a little ball and hit you from all kinds of different locations and positions that you would think they couldn't fit into, but they do, and then they hit something on you, right? And so even in a tournament, it's not typically the bigger girls that worry me. It's the smaller girls that worry me.
Yeah, because they've learned how to adapt too. Because
they're fighting people bigger than them all the time too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they've both have enlisted. Give Victoria a shout out.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Victoria, she's a black belt and competes. Married to Leo Noguera out of Alliance, Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
World champ.
Yeah.
And she's worked with both of them on conditioning and diet.
Nutrition's a big deal.
Yeah. Which I think that for me is where like my past background in bodybuilding and bodybuilding and powerlifting has paid off, is because I've had that discipline of my diet. I've always kind of, had those things in place that now are really paying off for me in jiu-jitsu, where you're learning the nutrition side now kind of as a new thing. For me, I had that advantage coming in. I've got to learn other things. So kind of like she said, when one person's learning one thing, the other person's learning something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that. How much weight have you lost, Dana?
I'm at like 85, 90 pounds
Yeah,
in the
I mean,
past
you look
year
great.
and a half.
Yeah,
Thank
I mean,
you.
you look great. Yeah.
And her
you.
strength's not. She's gotten stronger.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, and I was, and I use this term with all due respect. I mean, I've seen your matches, and they're violent. Like you
Good.
attack. I called him after. I can't remember what it wasn't. The big win, but it was probably
fight,
2 or 3
fight to win.
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
in
I was
Nashville.
like, geez, what is she? She's destroying these poor women, just bowling through them. The throws are just, and takedowns are just violent,
Yeah.
So, and the ability to, you don't do that if you don't have if you have an unconditioned body,
Right.
You can't move like that.
Well, one of the taps at Worlds was due to the other girl just being tired. I mean, that's all it was. I didn't submit her. I didn't point her out. I had some points on her. But as I passed her, she was like, I'm tired.
Yeah,
I'm done.
Yeah.
And so I think the nutrition part and learning that, I thought I understood nutrition, a year and a half or so ago to a certain degree. Not that I was eating well at that time, but I thought I had some level of understanding, but I really didn't. And so, like Sarah said, she came in understanding all of that. Whereas I've had to really learn that and fine tune it. And I'm pretty strict at this point. I don't do a lot of what people call cheat days. I also don't feel like I need to cheat from it, right? Because I've kind of got it dialed into things I like. I get my sweet tooth, when I need it. And it just works. And then it's consistency for me, right? Like I lift, 5 days a week. I do jiu-jitsu. Try to get some yoga in, just well-rounded. But it's really, I think about that consistency for jiu-jitsu as well as, everything else, the nutrition and the lifting.
It's part of the weird quirkiness addiction that we were talking about. I think that you get, I don't know specifically, I don't want to speak for you, but I know for me, like I've had a lot of anxiety and jiu-jitsu has definitely helped me with that.
Oh yeah.
So
Really? I didn't know that. I mean, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well,
do you remember? So I think it was the second class I ever went to was the seminar when N was here.
yeah.
And I think I was rolling with you, and I can't remember the other girl's name. But at the time, she was just starting to lose weight. So she was a bigger girl. So, they both made me feel welcome, but it was very intimidating. And I just sat over at the side and kind of watched.
I remember that.
Because I was so overwhelmed and so overstimulated, I couldn't function. And it wasn't from not knowing what to do or being in a new environment around new people. It was just, oh my God, like I'm thinking to myself, like you were saying, what am I doing here? Like these, it was a full packed mat. There was a lot of people, but yeah, I did. I was very overstimulated. And after that, I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to go back and do this or not. And my husband was like, give it a chance. Come on, and I did. And I'm glad that I did, but definitely because you are in close quarters with people, if you have that and you can overcome it, it definitely is a confidence builder, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. So what does your diet look like now? What are you following throughout the day?
Spinach.
Spinach.
I like spinach.
Okay.
No, it's more carbs than protein. Okay. High protein diet. I do a lot of low fat, so I eat a lot of chicken, a lot of fish, spinach salads topped with all the veggies I can get. The biggest switch for me, I think, really was like dips, sauces, dressings, because they're loaded with fats and stuff. And so I switched to sugar-free versions, good brands that don't taste dieting gross, right, that allow me to have what I want. I mean, I had chicken fingers, cauliflower chicken fingers for lunch today with like a spicy sauce and a salad. You know what I mean? So... but yeah, it's higher carb than protein, lots of protein and low fat.
Yeah, and so when people hear that, and we do a lot of kind of, I don't want to call it dietary counseling, but just hints and tips, whenever you try to deprogram people into thinking that, oh, I can't have carbs. There's too many,
Right.
like you have to realize that you're like what you're doing, what you described. I do a little yoga. I do a little this. I do a little of that. I go to jujitsu where you go an hour of jujitsu is 700, 800 calories. It's got to be, you get into it. You quickly are going to be in a calorie deficit if you're trying to starve yourself into weight loss, right?
Right. And it's not sustainable.
No,
right?
it's not sustainable.
And you need those carbs
Yeah.
to
Gotta have the energy,
give you energy to be able to do these
Absolutely,
things, right? I
yeah.
want to be good at jiu-jitsu. I want to be able to go in and not play patty cake. We've talked about that before. We can get into that in a little bit. But, I want to go in and roll hard and do my best. And you have to have energy to do that. You have to have carbs,
Yeah.
right? And so...
You're doing yourself a disservice by not having the proper nutrition education.
Right.
Because,
Absolutely.
and I think you can definitely attest to it too, because you've lost so much weight. People are always like, what'd you do? What'd you do? And it is, people they don't understand the nutrition portion. And we've been brought up to think, certain things are bad. This is bad. This is bad, and then we're essentially, like you said, you get into these situations, whether it's jujitsu or lifting or whatever, and you feel horrible. And people then they quit doing it because they feel horrible, not realizing they're making themselves feel that way because they're not properly fueling their body.
Right.
Because did you ever think that you could eat as much as you eat now?
No, part of the nutrition that I learned was I wasn't eating enough, right? I was eating the wrong foods, the wrong balances, and then I wasn't eating enough. We joke, I eat every 2 hours. I mean, we were at that last tournament, and Scott was like, you were constantly
Every time I
eating.
turn around, she's
Constantly eating,
shoving stuff in her face.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not hungry. And I mean, I joke it's every 2 hours, but it really is. It's every 2 hours, except for when I'm at jiu-jitsu. That's my longest break that I don't eat, but it's just knowing what to eat. It's balancing that. And I do track it on an app with Victoria, and it lets me see visually, right? I have this much more to go, and this is what my breakout for carbs and proteins, and I need more carbs, but let's have healthy carbs. Let's not go eat potato chips. Let's have some fruit. Let's have, something like that. And so it was really, for me, learning about that balance, learning about my healthy options to get the percentages right on how much carbs and protein and fat I wanted, and it's working, and yeah, but I agree, you have to be properly fueled to do what you want, and that's not starving yourself.
Yeah. How about you, Sarah? What does your diet look like?
It looks a lot different than it used to. That was a big thing for me. I've been doing it so long that I don't track anything anymore.
Yeah.
But I eat the same thing for breakfast and lunch literally every day. And during the week, I'm quite a bit more strict, about 80-20. And then on the weekend, I pretty much eat what I want. If I want to have a beer, have a beer. Sure. Last night I had big brownie dessert. But I have that balance still of what I'm doing to make up for it. So I can tell, I was so strict with it for so many years. That was a big thing for me. After cutting weight classes and stuff for so long, I didn't want to be that strict anymore, but I pretty much maintain where I'm at.
Yeah, but and you know how to adjust properly, right?
Yeah.
And it's not the big brownie dessert 5 nights a week.
No,
right?
it's, yeah,
right.
it's here and there,
right.
And
yeah.
it's in moderation. And like I said, it's 80-20. If I'm not as strict during the week, then on the weekend, I know, hey, I got to be a little more tied back. I try not to deprive myself. The other night, my girlfriends wanted to go have dinner on a Thursday. Well, typically I would have been like, now I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
So I kind of adjust myself accordingly to what's going on, because I did deprive myself so many times from those things, being so strict for so long. But once you do it for so many years, it just becomes second nature. And it goes back to that routine and consistency. That's why I still meal prep. That's why I still eat the same thing every day. It's just my routine. It's what I do. I'll probably always do it, And plus, I feel like if I give myself the opportunity to have those options, I don't make good choices, especially if I'm in a time crunch or something. It's too easy to go grab something that isn't the most healthy, whereas I have a refrigerator and a microwave at work. I have lunches in there for the week, and I can eat on the go, and I still make healthy choices, which I feel better about at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So what about, we touched a little bit on the mental aspect of jiu-jitsu. What could you share your thoughts on? Do you think jiu-jitsu has a mental impact
100%.
on you? Yeah.
It's absolutely like it's my, what do we call it? Not counselor, but we've
Therapy.
It's my therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, after having a really hard day at work or a stressful day at work or something stressful happens, you step on that mat and the only thing you're thinking about is breathing, not getting choked out, defending yourself, right? It is 100%, that mental break, that therapy. And, I turn into maybe not so nice of a person if I miss it too long, right? So it's not just physical, but it's 100% mental as well.
It's the do hard stuff mindset.
Yeah.
It's the if I am doing X and X is really effing hard, then I mean, what the asshole at work really isn't that big of a deal anymore, right?
No.
Or the bad day at work or the situation at home, that seemed like a really big deal
Yeah.
2 years ago is now like, come on, let's just, let's not make a huge deal about this, because an hour ago I was trying to fight for my life, I was trying to not get choked out, and putting it into that perspective really does, it satisfies an itch in the brain that needs to be, it's, if I'm doing this, the other stuff isn't so bad, And I don't apply that to a lot of things.
Exactly. I don't think I ever really leave class and feel like, man, I wish I wouldn't have went and done that.
Right. Yeah.
At the end of it, and even on the hard days when you're like, I really don't feel like being here today, but I'm going to go, even if you get your butt kicked when you leave, you're like, I feel better. There's just something about the endorphins, whatever it is.
That endorphin rush. Yeah.
You feel better, So it is a therapy sort of type of thing. And I think another really good thing about it, and Scott was saying, you have to learn to fail. And I think it's just a life lesson that a lot of us don't really know how to deal with because it's a lot of failing, a whole lot. And I still do it all the time. But you do have to get okay with it. And there's just something about that at the end of the day. It's like, okay, I can go in and keep trying and still be okay with it. And I feel like I feel better about myself for that for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you've checked a box that most people aren't doing. It's what I tell the kids all the time, where we'll get up and we'll go, we used to go run, so you get up and you go run, or you get up and you go to the gym, or you get up and do these things. And it's 9 o'clock in the morning, you're heading home, and you're like,
yeah,
we've done more today than most people do in a year, and it's not even 9 o'clock yet. And we can still go home and enjoy our day and do all these things. Yep. So, it's the same thing, Yep. I got on the mat and got, suffocated by 3 or 4 people, and then I choked out 2 more, in an hour. And that's pretty good.
We've talked about this before, and that it's like an active reset or, like a meditation.
Oh, yeah.
Where, where you're trying to think of, if you try to meditate, you're trying to just focus on just thinking about breathing and not thinking about anything else. And it's supposed to, I guess, wipe your hard drive clean, like rebooting your phone or something.
Yeah, right.
So in jiu-jitsu, it's kind of the same way. You're not thinking about work or family or, problems. You're thinking, how do I get this guy off me? How do I continue to move and defend this? And it I guess kind of resets your mind and wipes clean your hard drive some.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to touch on with you two in particular, because and I don't give up anything that you wouldn't want to give up, but you're both not teenagers getting into this, right? So, the people that say, oh, I'm too old to do that. I don't want to get out there. You're taking your kids and noticing your kids doing it and be like, I want to get out there and do that, which would never happen typically with the normal human, right? So, you don't have to give me your age, but can you elaborate on a little bit on
Well, I am almost ready to turn 45.
Okay, so 45, yeah.
I got into it older, even from the powerlifting standpoint. When I competed then, I was on the older spectrum of people. And I guess for me, I don't really think about it a whole lot. I don't really think about the age. I mean, there is definitely a difference, and I learned that when I went to, was it Indy?
Indy.
But I don't really think about the person's age when I'm getting ready to compete so much.
Yeah. Went to Indy. She's, had to drop down and compete at the adult level to find people to compete against.
Oh, okay.
So she's
Yeah,
going
yeah.
against anybody under
Right.
30, 20s.
There's no 45-year-olds most going to
No.
compete jiu-jitsu. I guess that's kind of my point, is that people will use that. That'll be the next excuse. People will say, I'm too old to go do that. Come on, And so no. You how long have you been doing it? 2 years?
Going on 2 years.
Going on
yeah.
2 years. So, and you're getting ready to turn 45. So, that's no excuse for,
No.
no excuse at all.
And I feel like it's probably one of the best things. Obviously, I'm very big believer of weightlifting. I think that definitely needs to be a part of every person's lifestyle. But next to that, I think this is probably one of the best things you can do, because you do have that mental aspect of it, that you're kind of giving yourself the therapy and an exercise at the same time. So I guess at least do something. At that point. You can make an excuse for anything, whether it's age or whatever. But
And one thing that I've seen in this 19 years of doing this, a lot of people that maybe used to do sports or used to work out, and they start to do jiu-jitsu. Well, guess what they start doing? They start working out and dieting. Yeah. Not because they want to work out and diet, it's because they want to make their jiu-jitsu better.
Right, yeah.
And so jiu-jitsu, kind of helps light a fire under that lifestyle.
Right. Yeah. You're not moving good. So why you're not moving good? Well, probably, I'm 80 pounds overweight or whatever it may be. It's like, okay, well, I need to do X to get better at this because I'm tired of going in there and getting armbarred all the time. Well, I need to work on this a little bit more, that kind of stuff.
because that's one thing we've kind of talked about among us is just the difference that Dana has had between when she was 80 pounds heavier versus now, how much different her game has to be because of that. So
yeah, my game's had to change a lot because I used what I had, right? I
No,
mean, I
no,
was
sure, yeah.
80, 90 pounds heavier, and so it was a lot of smash passing. It was a lot of using my weight. And so as I lost that weight, I wasn't on top as much. I had to learn that bottom game a little bit more. I had to, learn to be a little more agile on the mat. So it changed it a lot. But yeah, for those that are using the excuse, that they're too old, you're not going to ever be younger than you are today. Start, right? And that was my biggest regret, was really not starting sooner. I wish I had started sooner, and I didn't, but I started in my mid to late 30s. I'm 43 today, so I'm competing in the same age bracket that Sarah is. And yeah, I mean, it just can't be an excuse, right? You're never going to grow if you never step out of that comfort zone. And that's really what that's protecting, is your comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm too heavy. I'm too old. I'm not in shape. I'm not this. I'm not that. Those excuses that people would give to even like go to the gym or do whatever.
Anything,
is not applicable to this because of
another big one I hear is injuries.
Yeah.
I don't want to get injured,
Sure. Sure.
And I think you can get injured playing tennis or riding a bicycle.
Yeah. Things are going to happen regardless of what you're doing. It's not and this is coming from a guy that had a big badass injury from it. I also stepped out of the back of my van and tore my other ACL. So I mean, it's not like so it's not like things can't happen. So that's not an excuse either. You can't bubble wrap yourself and sit in the house all day long either. So
well, and I feel like we have a pretty good percentage of older people among the 3 locations. We obviously have a lot of kids at the Madisonville, but I mean, there's several older people. So it's not like it's a rarity.
Yeah. And I guess the statistics of jiu-jitsu, that's your highest probably participation, because we look at Jiu-Jitsu Con or the Master Worlds. They had 10,000 competitors 2 years ago, 11,000 last year.
Wow, yeah.
And it's that they're putting a lot of their focus, because that's where you're seeing the majority of people in that age group starting to train.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Scott and I talk about it a lot of the time, and this reason why I love staying around the culture, because I miss it like crazy. I mean, because it was that, it's such an outlet, it's such a positive experience.
And friendships.
Oh yeah,
Friendships,
and never worry about bullies or like this
You can choke each other
you
out.
choke each other out and then turn around and hug each other and
friends.
laugh about it. Scott's playing love songs in the background, so there's
singing to you when you roll.
Yeah.
That's always a good time.
Right. So I loved it dearly, and it was the reason why I was okay with like my kids needed to do this too, despite kind of what happened. But it's just an overall positive experience for everybody, and there shouldn't be. Everybody should be doing it. Everybody, the way I look at it.
Yeah, I would think so too. Especially if I had a daughter.
Yeah.
Both my boys did it for 6 years.
Yeah.
But if I had a daughter, a lot of creeps out there, and
Yeah.
and it's very effective. You had mentioned when a new person comes in, I'll put them with Dana, and it kind of sells what we do, kind of sells the art, right? And so I had one guy come in. He's 6'5", maybe, black belt in another art.
Tap out shirt on.
And I put him with Dana. Dana just smokes him.
Oh, yeah.
And I hear him talking to another guy, which is a Kentucky State police officer, talking about it. And the Kentucky State police officer goes, "Yeah, that's when I knew I was at the right place, when I got tapped out by a chick and a 14-year-old." So it's the product. The art itself is effective, and that's because of how we train and being able to, we roll every class, so you can't just do techniques and that's it. You've got to try to implement those techniques. You can do techniques all day and think, yeah, I got it.
Oh yeah, right.
And then you realize, no, I don't.
Yeah, if you can't apply it, then who cares?
Yeah.
I can do it. I can do an arm bar all day long for somebody on their back doing this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's fine.
And for women, I joke that I enjoy that because, some of the guys come in with some egos and they're like, "Oh, this girl, I'm going to take it easy on her," and kind of thing. And I joke that I enjoy it, but it really is empowering when somebody comes in from off the streets. It's a bigger guy. They're stronger than you. You know these things, right? But you're able to control that situation. Even if you don't tap them, you're controlling it to the point that you're not in danger. That's empowering. Mm-hmm. You go out on the street and, most people don't train. And so I feel like I could at least control it enough to get help when I need help or, something along those lines. So as much as I enjoy the competition aspect, and I am very competitive. So I love that that's an outlet for me in that way. But it's really all about the self-defense for me and feeling empowered and feeling like I can take care of myself, not being afraid to walk down the street at night, not being afraid to travel by myself, because there was a time in my life that I was afraid to do those things, that I didn't like being home alone, that those things made me nervous to the point that I would even feel sick, you know what I mean? And that's just not part of my life anymore. And it's because of the sport. It's because I know that what I've learned is practical, it's useful, and I can defend myself. And I believe it when I say it, right? It's not just that I'm saying it.
Right.
I believe it.
Yeah. The
tournaments and the friendships and all of that, that's just the cherry on top. That just makes it all that much better, So it's been so great for me. And the 6 or 7 years that I've done it, it feels like it's been a year or two. It's just gone by so quick.
Yeah, I can remember when you started, and when you said 6 or 7 years, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, she teaches now. She teaches a class
amazing.
now.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing. Yeah. So what's next for the both of you? You got tournaments coming up?
Yep.
Nashville. You're doing Nashville too?
Yep.
Yeah. As long as we have some girls that
Yeah.
sign up. Yeah, as long as we have some girls that sign up. Nashville's in July, IBJJF tournament. So
Nice.
both hoping to compete there. So hopefully we get some girls in our brackets.
Yep.
Or at least absolute, because she can do absolute now,
Yeah.
which is great.
So you've mentioned a couple different tournament promotions or whatever. So IBJJF is the big thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the one where you have to actually have. Well, it's harder to get
Okay.
certified in it. You have to have your belt ranks certified. So somebody that's IBJJF has to sign off that you got these belts and when you got them.
Okay.
So there's some legitimacy there. You have to pass a background check every year. So don't have some felon running the school.
Gotcha.
You have to have CPR and first aid. You have to pass a safe sport course, which talks about grooming and sexual assaults and how to identify those kind of things. What else is there? A rules course. You have to take a rules course and pass a test on the rules. And it's very difficult and it's expensive. You have to pay to do those kind of things. If you don't do that, you can't compete at these tournaments.
Okay.
So and when people come to these tournaments like Nashville or Atlanta, they're coming from Chicago, Miami, Brazil. I mean,
Yeah, it's a worthwhile travel. For them.
So you're not going up, even though what we do is amateur or recreational. These people, probably have jobs as well, but they're taking their competition seriously because it's going to cost them, $1,000 or $2,000 to come compete at this tournament. In which, if you lose the first round, you're out. That's it.
Yeah.
And so it usually gets the those that are more serious, that have legitimacy behind them. Not to say that the other promotions aren't good. Fuji has a tournament, but if you wanted to sign up somebody to compete, you don't even own the school, and you want to sign them up, they come sign up. Or there's now IBJJF's rules are really strict. So if you don't, you got to have a certain type of gi and belts got to be in ranked rash guards, and they get a little ridiculous on that kind of stuff. But
if I'm looking for a school, if you're looking for IBJJF certified schools and they participate in these tournaments, that okay, I'm going into a school where they at least have some first aid and CPR.
Yeah.
The guy has been vetted out. He's not he's not on some sex offender list or anything like that. And kind of there's a higher standard for those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to say that the other ones aren't.
No, not to say that too. But there's
this you have to. You have to go through those things to be considered certified.
Well, but coming from somebody that's not, I mean, we're obviously buddies, but but it's not affiliated with any school. If I'm searching these things out, if I'm listening to this and saying, "Hey, I would love for my daughter," or I'm a woman that wants to go to these things, I don't go to the guy's house that got mats in his garage that says he's a jiu-jitsu school.
Exactly.
It's a.
Well, and there's some good ones there too.
Yeah.
But yes, and they can't compete at these tournaments.
Right. Yeah.
You have to be certified to be able to compete at these tournaments, and that's I think important, and I think you get some of the best people in the area.
Yeah.
Well, we had Mark that we was talking earlier. He was in Europe and he fought at Rome.
Yeah.
On Friday, and he didn't have anybody in his weight class. I had somebody from Brazil contact me and say, can you talk to him and see if he'll come down a class, and I'll fly from Brazil to Rome and have the match there.
It's crazy. Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not, it's not just some rec league. I mean, it's it's not professional either. The people that are there are people that have jobs. And,
sure.
But they're taking their competition seriously.
Yeah. And what kind of community is going to do that for somebody? That is amazing. Hey, tell your guy that I'll fly from Brazil to Rome if he'll come down a weight class.
Yeah.
Okay, he's come down a weight class. Oh, okay, yeah, I'm on a plane. I'll be there in a minute. Like that. It's just it's amazing to me. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I mean, do you guys have any? You fought both, Fuji and IBJJF.
No, I think it's one of those things, especially like we were saying from the standpoint of if you have children and you're thinking about getting your kids into it in today's world and society. I think that is a big thing to know, that the people and the places that you're taking your kids are up to snuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to be disparaging about a Fuji tournament or whatever. I'm just saying that there's a if I'm looking for my kids to go or looking for a place, then there are qualifications for people to have those
because
things.
A lot of people, if you're just getting into it, don't know that. I mean, we didn't know that.
Sure, yeah.
Well,
I didn't know it until you just sit there.
Yeah. So I think especially if there's people listening with kids, and even if you're, a female, I encourage you to just give it one class and try it because it's definitely different than you're going to anticipate by watching it from the outside.
Yeah, you said earlier, watching it and doing it are two very different things, and I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, even watching it today, I'm not intimidated by it, but it just looks so different than it actually feels when you're out there.
Yeah.
But I think, if you're looking for a gym and you check out a gym and you don't see a lot of females on the mat, I think that to me would potentially be a little bit of a red flag, even though I started without females, right?
Mm-hmm.
You walk into our school and we've got females on the mat just about every, night of the week. And I think it speaks to the environment that Scott's built at our gym. We've got good kids programs really at all the schools. Madisonville's has really blown up with, a kids program. I think seeing the types of people, the different ages, the different genders on the mat is pretty telling, when you look at a school as well.
Yeah, because there's going to be people that are listening to this that if they're considering it or they're kind of inspired by you guys that have, probably had say they've had some sort of unfortunate incidences in their life and there's anxiety that surrounds it to begin with, right?
Exactly. Right.
Going there. So I want to make sure that there is, what am I looking for? As far as, if they're IBJJF certified, they've gone through all this checklist of things, and Scott Audas Jiu Jitsu is one of those places.
9 times out of 10, there's women there that have been through things that others aren't aware of. I've seen it in, powerlifting. There was different federations, but same sort of thing. There was a lot of sexual harassment, different things that women went through. Same thing with bodybuilding. So 9 times out of 10, the person that's next to you rolling, she could have had an incident the week before that nothing about. So I feel like for us, it's kind of one of those things, just come and do it and see. Because I think Scott, remember when we did our blue belt test and one of the things he asked me was, what was the biggest, was it thing that you didn't expect to get from jiu-jitsu? I think was what he asked me. And I said the thing for us was just friendships, because I know that she's got my back and I got her back, and we may go to dinner, we may choke each other out.
Right. Yeah.
Well, there's a special bond. It's not the same as military, where you're in a war with somebody, but when you've shared blood, sweat, tears, literally,
Yeah.
there's a bond
there
that is probably closer than other activities. But
that's where I knew you, but that's where this came from. I haven't done jiu-jitsu in 15 years, but it's still there because it's my boy, we whether or not that's the short time that we did it together was beautiful, but the lingering brotherhood that comes after that is eternal, so it is a special bond that kind of comes along with it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I really love is every time we go to a tournament, Fuji, IBJJF, Fight Twin, it doesn't matter what it is, you can see our school moving throughout the tournament to watch the matches because people who aren't competing show up just to support their teammates because those bonds are really that strong. She flew to Vegas to watch me compete last year.
Mm-hmm.
I could have lost the first match, and she went all the way to Vegas for days.
We just thought, well, it's a fun trip. We'll go to Vegas. We'll get to watch jiu-jitsu.
Right, yeah, sure.
But better.
Yeah. So, I mean, you really do develop some really strong friendships, and we just support each other, and it's a lot of fun just to kind of see that, I think, at the tournaments. And Scott's got to be proud of really, I know you're going to say what the team built, but I mean, it started with you, and it follows his leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just something cool to be a part of. It's something cool to watch.
And we got some exciting things coming down.
Yeah.
Too, yeah. We're going to be opening up in Newburgh.
Yeah.
And then we have a team down in Western Kentucky around Marion, Catawba, that their instructor moved to Virginia, and they're just a bunch of younger kids. And they need some guidance, and they're tough. They're really good,
gritty.
and they're gonna join us as well. So
Yeah.
it's continuing to expand and bring good people together. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly with you, but he's not going to admit to it. But I mean, it's again, better humans, right? That's what we're here for. Better humans.
Yep.
Right. Well, thank you both for being an inspiration to women all around. I mean, it is, it's a different thing whenever you're, leading a corporation or you're doing this and you've stepped out of this, typical, maternal, matriarchal kind of, box and gone up the corporate ladder. And it's a whole lot different when you're just kicking ass constantly, and on national levels and world levels and all these things. So, and again, neither one of you have been doing this for 20 years, right? You're doing it for 6 years, a couple of years, in starting in your late 30s and 40s. So this is not a way to they've been doing this for years. Oh, she's a power lifter too, whatever. No, this has nothing to do with that,
Nope.
right? It doesn't translate at all.
No.
At all.
I don't think anything translates to jiu-jitsu.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
no other martial art.
Complex math and chess. That's about it. Some physics, maybe some geometry. Right. Yeah. But it's a beautiful thing that you ladies are doing. It's a beautiful thing that Scott has going on, and I am incredibly proud to be to get to watch it from afar and be a part of it. So
Yeah, very proud of you both, and you need some recognition because that's really something impressive for this area.
Yeah.
That a lot of people don't know or wouldn't know without your podcast.
Without this.
So we appreciate that to give them some recognition that they
no,
deserve.
absolutely.
So.
No, and we'll we want updates whenever you compete next. So we'll do it all again. So
And I think too, like she said, Scott is, he's not going to say it, but I think it also speaks that this has come from his school.
yeah.
Two people who have won, and just the level that we have from a little school in Henderson, that's impressive.
And that grows and organically, it's not, Scott is not the, he's obviously a business whiz, but I mean, it's like, as far as the entrepreneurial pusher of,
Right.
we're going to expand, we're going to this location, it just,
He's not flashy about it.
It just, we should go there. And then it goes. And then before you know it, there's 40 students there,
Yeah.
Well, it's all about the people,
Yeah,
if we've got, if our guys, like Madisonville with Steve and Aaron and, Newburgh with Mark and Barnabas, these people have been with us, so they're your people, dude. Yeah.
I'm gonna start speaking for you if you're not gonna say it.
But but you get those good people, then that's you're not just going to open up because you think it's a good market,
Right? Yeah. Hey, this looks like a good niche. We'll move here and see how many students we get. No, you open it up and there's literally there's 20 students waiting for you to open up there.
I feel like it's less of a business decision, right? It's not about the bottom line
No,
for
yeah,
Scott. It's
right,
not
yeah.
about the money. It's about changing lives. It's about the things that Sarah and I have been talking about with feeling confident and feeling different than we did years ago. Just being able to do things that we couldn't do years ago because we've developed that confidence, right? I think that's really where it grows from. It's not about the money. We're not opening schools to make money, right?
And have you? And I know he has like kind of this open door policy at training at other places, but coming from a person that's trained at 2 different schools, then with him, it's not the same. There's a vast difference in the approach, the teaching style, the camaraderie,
We call it culture.
openness, the culture, right?
Well, even just the size. I mean, we went to Atlanta and trained at Alliance down there, and it was an awesome experience.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people. When we walked in and I seen the class size of one class, it was crazy.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think it is, I don't want to say necessarily more personalized, but it kind of is, at being a little bit smaller, and it is that culture that's part of the culture,
Yeah.
Scott can pay attention to the details, right? Because jiu-jitsu is about inches. It's a slightly different grip. It's just a little farther back in the collar, right? And he can pay attention to those details with the students because the school is, I think, that right size. And even through our growth, that has continued. It's just, it's a different style of teaching. I've only ever really trained full-time at Scott's place, but I've cross-trained at a couple of different places, and it's just a different style. Not that the other ones are bad.
No.
Right.
But I'm proud that our jiu-jitsu travels well. So if we do,
It does.
if we do train other places,
Yeah.
our guys and gals typically do well.
Yeah.
So, but I get maybe a little too picky on details sometimes.
No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Well, congratulations to you both.
Thank
you guys
you.
are kicking ass, and it is awesome to sit down with you, and we will do it again for sure.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Yeah. Scott, always an honor.
Hey, thank you, Derek.
All right. See y'all next time.